organization and be like, hey, listen, if we scaled back and kind of redirected where those funds are going and make them more specific and targeted, you'll have a better, connection with your employees, and you'll have a more enhanced culture, if you will.
Hi, everyone. This is Vinay Raman. Welcome to another episode of the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast. I'm going to call it BBSE because that title is so long. I appreciate you joining in. A couple of things I'd like to do is, first of all, I'd like to tell you a little bit about what the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast, the BBSE, is all about. BBSE is all about this idea that really started for me as a little bit of a personal journey. What I didn't see, the narratives that were happening in the business that I was running, are what hurt me the most. Now, as an analyst, I used to study a lot of the numbers and the data and what was happening behind the scenes from just purely a data perspective. But it's the stories that are really important. If you don't understand the stories that are happening and emerging in your company, as a leader, you can see all the data in the world, but if you don't see the story and the connection between the data, you won't actually see what comes next. And those are the things that hurt you most. So the Business Blind Spots Exposed podcast, BBSE, is all about the stories that occur as a result of your business growing, expanding, having customers. And BBSE is all about bringing the people on who see these stories, who are consultants, coaches, experienced leaders who have gone through and seen these stories themselves and how they saw it. Us here. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Vinay. How are you?
How you doing? Good. Well, hold on one second. I'm just introducing everyone into who you are and kind of doing a little bit of our housekeeping here. Well, and I'm really excited to get into our conversation here. So I do want to make a note that this is an interactive session. So if you have questions for Mike along the way or for myself, there is a chat box on the right-hand side or in whatever browser that you're using. Type comments in, ask questions. Mike and I would be happy to try to answer those and entertain those questions and give you greater or deeper detail based on what the questions are. In the meanwhile, anybody who's listening in, please tell us where you're connecting from, what part of the United States, what part of the world. Love to hear from you. So, Mike is his role at One Digital as business development executive. He's been in the insurance industry for quite some time now, and I'll tell you one of the things that I've always liked about Mike is he's just a fantastic and personable guy. I always learn a lot from Mike. I always enjoy my conversations with him, and always feel like I've just seen an old friend every time I talk with him. So, always comfortable conversations with Mike, but also educational. And we're going to talk about how to take care of employees and so that they'll take care of you. The employee benefits and how they'll take care of you as a company as well as the employees. So just a little bit about Mike. He's been in the insurance industry for a number of years, for over a decade now, in roles from account management to business development. So kind of seen some of the tears that people have tried to develop new business, kind of understood what the requirements are on the front end as to what pains people were having and how those pains were solved. Mike, is that a reasonable way to frame up a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, it's thanks, Vinay. Yeah, that pretty much wraps up, kind of my role over the last, it's been 10, 12 years now, 12 or 13 years that I've been on this roller coaster ride of insurance. And I can tell you that my perspective has changed dramatically, opening up the black box that is the insurance industry and understanding both from the carrier side and from the employer side and the broker side that, our healthcare system, a lot of people will classify it as broken. I like to say challenging is maybe a more apt description of it. There are definitely some areas for improvement. And, I've got a kind of a unique purview of some of the challenges that employers have faced and some offer some pretty fun, dynamic, and innovative solutions to help people get through it.
I want to talk about the really important stuff first. I mean, you got two babies arriving. one on the human side, one on the four wheel side.
Yeah, that's right.
How's baby watch coming?
It's good. It's good. I joke around that I say that my wife's ready to eject the baby. I think we're like 3 weeks out now from the due date, so it's any day now, and it's just waiting. It's a waiting game. But I appreciate you asking. That was
well. I'm glad I got some of your time before your world is turned upside down.
Yeah, that's what everybody keeps saying. I'm a little nervous, but I think it'll be a great ride.
You'll do fine. Kids haven't come with instruction manuals for thousands of years, so
right. Love it.
So we set this topic as managing employee benefits, the numbers behind the why. And the way I always like to think about it is great leaders are not concerned about the data so much as they're concerned about the story in the company, right? If they can see the narrative or the story, that's important, and the data helps them understand the story in greater color and greater clarity. Talk to me about that statement there in terms of what you have seen as far as benefits and the numbers, and what is really the story that's emerging around benefits that you've seen. You said your perspective has changed. Share with me a little more about that.
Yeah, so, kind of looking back over the last, well, in my case, 10 plus years, maybe going back even further, benefits were a great tool for organizations to attract and retain employees. And it was kind of a given benefit that you would get and get this opportunity. And, as the healthcare landscape has changed and rising healthcare costs have gone through the roof, employers are looking for more unique and innovative ways to try and, again, attract and retain those employees within the organization. So before, where it was a box that they needed to check, yes, we offer a benefit plan. Yes, you get these benefits when you come in here and it'll cover your family. It's part of your package, right? Nowadays, what we're seeing is organizations have to be a lot more strategic in their approach with offering benefits. It's not just let's throw more dollars at it to get more people to come into the door. What we're seeing is, okay, well, we've got X amount of females in our population between this age and this age. We need to make sure that the benefits that we're offering are boutique and specific enough for that group in order to one, make them feel engaged and happy in the workplace, and also to bring more people into the organization. So going back to your point, Vinay, with the story that we're hearing from organizations that don't take a proactive, visionary, strategic approach to their benefits are constantly complaining about the cost of healthcare going up. They have no control. They don't understand why it has to be this way, and they don't see a better outcome that's attainable. They don't see actionable steps in order to reach that goal. The story, if you speak with organizations that have a different approach, they understand and are vested in building a more dynamic outcome for their employees, will hear a different conversation. You'll hear, well, we've changed X, Y, and Z, and now because of this, we've seen a 7% increase in productivity because employees are now no longer having to find time outside of their workday to get X, Y, and Z done because we offer it through our benefit package. You'll hear, instead of saying that we've got rising healthcare costs, that we've been able to develop a system where we understand what this increase will be year over year, tentatively projected, and we understand that there's measurable objectives that we can deploy in order to create better cost savings if need be throughout those years. And what I mean by that is disease management, case management, making sure employees are utilizing the benefits the most effectively and efficiently as possible. And it's really to educate those employees to become better consumers within their own healthcare space. So there's two different stories, right? You've got the healthcare system's broken, we hate it, it keeps going up, it doesn't matter what we do. You see deductibles and co-insurance eroding year over year to create cost savings. And then you see the other organizations that are like, well, we just implemented this and we're adding a fertility benefit and we're doing student loan debt repayment in order to attract and engage our employees. And those are,
Gosh, I feel like there are about 14 things to unpack in what you just said.
Yeah, that was quite a bit, right?
So for anybody listening in, I mean, you want to know why I invited Mike? I mean, he basically summarized 10 years in about 14 sentences. Fando. So while I'm doing this, I call it Business Blind Spots Exposed, BBSE. And the reason why I call that is because those stories that you don't see are the blind spots. And this is really, really interesting to me because there's 3 of them that I jotted down, and I don't even know if I caught all of them. And I see Van Daughtry saying, "Great job, Vinay and Mike." Thanks, Van, for listening in. I hope I'm accurately capturing everything that Mike just said. So let me repeat back to you what I just heard. So the healthcare system is broken, or probably challenging is the word that you use, right? So this is no longer a time to start thinking of the healthcare system as that I can navigate by myself. You really kind of need someone to help you navigate that healthcare system because there's so many nuances, loopholes, and eddies within the system, if you will, right? So that's the first thing that I heard. So I'll call that blind spot number 1. It's not just I want healthcare. Number 2 is benefits is a strategic, not a checkbox item. Just because you have benefits is no longer the compelling advantage that was maybe 10 years ago, right? And custom and boutique, because you are a company with a unique culture, a unique value proposition as a company, a unique population, you got to build a boutique kind of service in terms of your benefits, weaving it from all these different options together. You got to weave that together. And the third thing that I heard is if you start to measure your objectives in terms of what you're trying to do as a company, then you can manage your return on investment with the benefits program that you put together. I don't know if I did a very good job of summarizing everything you said there, but did I hit some of the high points at least?
That was excellent. That was excellent. That was a great recap, Vinay.
So tell me some stories here. I ever since I've been a little kid, I've always loved the stories. Tell me some stories of how this made a difference for someone. Where did it start, and what was maybe not the fairy tale ending or the fairy tale ending? Where did it start and where did it end for someone that that was maybe a recent or past customer?
Right. So that's what one of the challenges that I love about this role is trying to figure out solutions for clients that are so diverse and unique in scope that you can't just offer a generic product for each of the groups because you're going to miss out and you're going to miss the target. I've got a group here locally that's about 25 or 30 people, and it's a tech firm. And this tech firm competes against Google and Apple. So when you're trying to pull talent from some of the biggest tech giants in the world, and you're a 30-person company, you have to get very creative in how you can approach that, right? And obviously the first thing that people will do is salary. That has to be competitive. But after salary, they're going to take a look at benefits. And you think, okay, well, medical, dental, vision, that's great. But when you're going up against Google and Apple, there are so many ancillary benefits in addition to just that basic model that employers think of that you could be missing out on. And what I mean by that is when you bring these employees in, you have to find out what's important to them, right? Like why would if let's say salary was equal, and let's say that my opportunity and growth pattern was equal at both organizations, what's going to make me choose Google over local tech firm? So this local tech firm has to be very creative and specific in their approach to bring on new talent to the organization. So what does that look like? Well, of course, the first thing you're going to do is max out your benefits. So you're going to offer the richest medical, dental, vision plans, right? But you're only creating an apples-to-apples comparison with those other tech giants. So you're not putting yourself forward. From there, you have to figure out, okay, well, what can we do to kind of I don't want to say engage, but really attack the employee's whole self.
I mean, you're talking about building that separation, right? Building that separation, right?
Correct, right. And with that, we want to take a look at what are some of those pain points that would create absenteeism for that employee at work. Is it nursing, daycare? Is it, mechanic issues? Is it long-term care? Do you have an elder parent that needs help or resources? So all of these things now we're going to start take a look at and be like, okay, we're going to build this into your benefit package to create a product that attacks the employee's whole self, inside work, outside work, how they're affected in the community, what else is going on in their lives that we can help solve to make them more productive at work. And some of the creative solutions that we've done, and Vinay, you and I have talked about this, is instead of a 401k contribution, we're looking at student loan debt repayment options, or both. Some organizations will provide small amounts of equity in each of the companies that they enroll in, which is obviously a great opportunity. Oops, excuse me there for 1 second. Zoom meetings, right? Great opportunity. But, what we found is that there has to be a kind of shotgun approach to this, and we need to send it out to a bunch of different options. And for this group specifically, and how we're pulling talent, it is some of those things that I mentioned. We've got an Amazon style shopping experience for these employees where they can earn monies throughout the year for hitting wellness goals, if they're doing metrics within the company, and they can use that for daycare expenses, cell phone reimbursements, chocolate of the month club, you name it. Student loan debt repayment options is big, and we found that employees will lock in to an organization for 5 years if they have student loan debt repayment options, which is very impactful, lower turnover rate for your employees, less cost on recruiting and onboarding. And it helps to build the culture within the organization. So what we did and how we attacked this client, Vinay, is the success story here is we determined what the culture of the organization was and how we can enhance that to bring employees in so they understand the feel, the look of the organization and want to choose that over some of these other big tech giants.
So I'm furiously jotting notes here, and I apologize if I'm not making sort of the eye contact here with you, but I'm grabbing all kinds of notes here as you're talking, because I'm actually learning. I continue to learn a lot from you, Mike. So, I just put a post on LinkedIn actually earlier today, and I said, the hallmark of there's one word that is a hallmark of a great leader, and that's the word invite. They invite people to a better future, right? Not the leader's better future, the individual's better future. And what I'm loving about what I'm hearing here is, first of all, I feel good because I think I'm hearing you validate what I just said. That's a bonus. But number two is that if you start to think of your benefits as a way to invite them to that better future, right? If it is about that, they want to get that student debt off their head and they lock in for 5 years, because you do that and somebody else doesn't necessarily put that on their list because hey, we've got all this huge gigantic buffet of options. They're like, yeah, but I feel like Chinese food today. I don't care about Italian, and I don't care about Mexican. I don't care about everything else. I just want Chinese food today. Mm-hmm. You say, well, I offer Chinese food. Right. Well, then all of a sudden the buffet is a lot more interesting because that's what they're coming there for. So this is really interesting, but there's a thought that pops up in my head as I hear this.
So to interject, and I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to expand on your comment. If an employee has Chinese food and they want Chinese food and there's a buffet, they're in the example that I was talking about, the value add to showing an employee what they may not know is available. You can say that we also have Cantonese or Taiwanese food here. If you like this, you may also like this. And that's what employers should be doing when they're offering these benefit packages to the employees, because the employees don't generally know what's available and what's out there. So if you can go and guide them to a better state, you'll have longer employee retention rates. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, wheels are spinning in my head here. So tell me about how talk to me about some of the numbers, right? Let's say we get the story here. So two things that I want to bring up, and I'll let you answer these as you see that. I'd love some numbers from you in terms of before and after, kind of how the numbers change for that, whether it was this company or somebody else. How do the numbers change in terms of the employee engagement? That's one question. And number two is, and I'm going in two different directions here. Number one, that sounds complicated to do all of this customization. Maybe you start with that.
Right.
How do you do that?
Right. So, the topics that we're talking about here are in addition to what's happening with the foundation of their benefit package, right? So I think a lot of the times what people kind of forget is that we're building on something that's already existing. Okay. So that process flow, the administration, the employee's user experience, those are already built into their current platform. What we're doing is adding enhancements on top of that to attract employees. So even stepping back from there, from a story standpoint, going back to that example of the organization that I told you about before, it's always complaining about cost control and it keeps going up and the system's broken. Right there, for me, there's huge red flags that this group isn't going after. They're going down the Chinese food route. Not that there's anything wrong with Chinese food. I love it. But, instead of taking a look at some other alternatives and getting upset because all they're doing is eating the same meal over and over again, they're getting the same outcome and the same result, and they don't understand why. So part of my role and, kind of what should make a business owner or an employer think is if they have the I hate the healthcare system, I don't understand it mentality, then they need to dig deeper and find a consultant that can guide them to a better outcome through different initiatives. And what we've seen, and there's kind of seems to be a disconnect from, I'm technically younger for the industry that I'm in. And with that, I've got a different perspective and a different approach to helping organizations out. And a lot of the challenges that I face, we're talking about business blind spots exposed, is being comfortable in the relationship that you're currently in and not really making any changes or exploring other options to achieve a better outcome. Right? Boil that down. What I mean is, you've been doing this for the last 10 years, right? 5 years. You've been getting negligible increases or improvements year over year. But for whatever reason, you feel that you're being managed well. If there were any other, I'm having a brain fog right now, like line item, I don't want to say line item, but like, HR or product development, storage, manufacturing, anything to that effect, those all run incredibly lean within an organization. They make them as efficient as possible, to run as fast as possible. And for whatever the reason, that seems to just fall off the radar when it comes to employee benefits. A lot of the times the owners, CEOs, CFOs want to push that off to the HR people, or they don't take it on because they don't see that there's a visionary benefit. There's long-term vision for the benefits, and they use it from a very tactical approach. And that mindset, that process needs to change. And part of my role is to help organizations understand that you shouldn't just be looking at this once a year. This should be in every quarter, just like you're doing every other board meeting or, revenue projections, anything to that effect to make this efficient.
I'd like to reach out to people who are listening in here. Van, thanks for commenting in. I'd love to hear your thoughts and anyone else. And do you believe that your organization has got benefits, or have you worked with organizations that have got benefits that have not been touched in over a year? Or just you don't feel like the benefits package really addresses you anymore? I'm kind of curious. Or if you made some changes in your organization. I'd be kind of curious as to what people are seeing and what they've experienced. What I heard from you, though, Mike, in I'm always trying to distill from my simple mind what are the take-home messages, right? What got you here today won't get you through to tomorrow, right? If just because you put a program in place last year or the year before, whatever the case may be, that doesn't mean that it still applies anymore. I went through a leadership class a little earlier this week just because I'm always trying to raise my game. And what they said is one of the easiest wins for companies is not trying to create brand new processes. It's revisiting old processes and saying, does this still work? Right? We created this process 6 months ago. does it still work for us? And it's a lot easier to edit what is already in place as opposed to go and start afresh. And I think that's kind of what I'm hearing from you. By revisiting this, the process actually might just get a little bit easier, more tuned.
Right. Sometimes you have to take a step back and to go 2 steps forward, right? And we see that a lot of the times when we sit down with organizations that, what has been working isn't going to continue to work. And I always like to ask the question, looking over the past 5 years in your healthcare increases, are you comfortable with that same trajectory for the next 5 years?
Huh. That's right. Do you want to change that path? I mean, if your insurance costs continue to rise at a linear level, are you okay with that?
Right, exactly.
Huh. I mean, even if you shave a couple of points off here and there, how much does that net for you as a company? And what else could you do? I mean, could you hire another person with what that nets for you? I mean, that's a huge win right there, right?
I know. Healthcare costs are increasing; they're outpacing inflation.
Yeah. That's it's a crazy thing that's happening for multiple reasons. I think that's another conversation over about 5 beers, right? Interesting stuff. So I want to kind of come back to that other point about the numbers, right? Mm-hmm. I think everyone wants to know sort of size, scope, and scale. I mean, how big of an issue is this? How much of a swing is there? Tell me, drop some knowledge on me. Some numbers there.
So here's an example of a group that I worked on, and I moved them off of what is known as a PEO, Professional Employer Organization. If you're not familiar with that, what it is an all-encompassing human capital management solution system where you go under an umbrella organization's tax ID and get all the benefits of being lumped in with a larger organization. So lower benefit costs, payroll costs are all embedded, admin, HR, 401k can all be updated, right? And PEO,
would it be fair to call that something? I mean, it's not exactly right, but almost kind of renting the employee, right? You're someone else. It's under their umbrella. They're yours, but you get ownership of it as long as you're under their umbrella.
Right. Exactly. And PEOs are a great fit for some organizations, but when you get to a specific size, the PEO model may not be the most attractive for an organization. And with that, it goes back to my point before where there is low admin. You've kind of got somebody else doing it. The cost increases are a few percentage points every year. We've got a couple of PEO partners that we work with. They do a great job. But the downside to that is there's no actual control over the cost of that. You're just going to pay for it every year, regardless of how well you run or how poor you run. I'll put an asterisk around that. You're going to pay the same amount, right? So this organization, it took us about a year for them to kind of evaluate the process, understand where they're at, get comfortable with the idea, and then finally make the change. But with that, there are about 70 employees or so. And coming out of the PEO, we saved them approximately $85,000 for better benefits, better administration, similar platform, and it was an all-around win. So there are some really great cost savings for organizations by kind of being different, looking outside of the box and challenging the status quo. As an example, to expand on that, there's a big push right now for organizations that are level or self-funded. And I apologize to your audience if you're not familiar with some of these funding mechanisms. We can kind of scale back a little bit to talk through those as well. But there is a pharmacy benefit carve-out where you can take the pharmacy management, PBM, outside of your current arrangement with whoever your insurer is. If it's, say, let's Blue Cross as an example, and we take that pharmacy benefit and use it and shop it out to a third-party administrator, you could potentially, we've seen it, save upwards of 30% on your annualized healthcare spend just by taking a look at this option. But it's difficult because you're like, well, what do you mean we're pulling it away from the carrier? Who are these other people that are going to manage it? What does that look like? And that can be a pause for a lot of people. They're like, we don't want to worry about it. We don't want to deal with it. But for those forward-thinking groups, you can really create a great cost saving. And then by doing that, Vinay, now we've got data on how the employees are using their prescriptions. When are they using them? Are there options where we see I don't want to say a misuse of the drug, but there may be better health outcomes by providing different solutions, case management for those employees. And we can see all of that information through the data by carving out the pharmacy benefit, right? Now, this is just one tactic of an overall strategy that we can provide for organizations that are looking to take control.
So these are pretty staggering numbers, right? I mean, I made reference kind of in passing of this idea of, being able to save enough to trim enough of the fat, if you will, that you can start to, hire an employee. With this organization with 70 employees, I got to imagine hiring one, maybe even two people, or significantly funding one or two people with the $85,000 saved moves the needle for them as an organization. That's significant, right? And this idea of trimming costs by 30% because you pull the privacy component out of it. You can't know that stuff, but now you start to see what people's compliance are with how they're using the drugs and the medications to a better end. That's beautiful. It reminds me of a time I interviewed with Microsoft many years ago in my career now. And one of the things that I loved about it is they were paying a lot less than everybody else, but it's Microsoft, right? I mean, it's kind of nice to be able to put Microsoft in your resume. One of the things that I was like, oh man, if I get this job, I'm taking this job, is the idea that there's zero out-of-pocket costs for medical expenses. And they started telling us these stories about people, a guy who got into a motorcycle accident, big, huge accident, everything was taken care of. It's like, that was a game changer, right? I wasn't worried about the cost, my salary anymore. I was like, wow, this is a fantastic deal. So some excellent points there. I want to catch up. We've got a bunch of comments coming here. Van says a business should have checkups, check-ins with their professional advisors like Mike on a regular basis, much like having a doctor's appointment or a wellness check. Yeah, I think that brings home that point. This is not something to just leave on the shelf and come back and revisit every 5 years.
Right, that's a great point. And to that, to expand on that, you should be meeting quarterly to make sure that everything's running correctly. And just with any other examination or checkup, when we find a problem, issue, or concern early, it's a lot easier to course correct than it would be to fix a problem that's been going on for the entire year. So from that standpoint, yeah, it is very important to continually connect with your advisor.
Jerry says, great to see Michael Kodweis. Jerry, I agree. It's always good to say Michael Kodweis.
Good to see you, Jerry.
always good nuggets from Mike. And Jerry was asking more. Can you kind of frame up for us a little more about what's that perfect client that kind of gets the most bang for the buck from sitting with you in One Digital?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you, Jerry, for asking that. So clients that we're able to really help and benefit are those organizations that are in growth mode, right? They've got 50, 60 employees. They've got a benefit package. Things are going well, but they've got projections where they want to grow to 100 people or 150 people over the next 2-3 years. And they need to make sure that their benefit strategy is aligning with the growth and the changes of their organization. Oftentimes what I'll see is I'll sit down with employers that are 100 plus employees, and what we're finding is that they're over investing in their employees, and it's missing the mark. They don't understand the value of the benefit. They don't know how to use it. The employer thinks they're doing a great job, but when you go to ask the employee about the benefit package, they'll be like, yeah, it's okay. It's good. So those are fantastic opportunities to sit down with an organization and be like, hey, listen, if we scaled back and kind of redirected where those funds are going and make them more specific and targeted, you'll have a better connection with your employees, and you'll have a more enhanced culture, if you will. The clients that, I'll brag a little bit. The clients that I like to work with, and I think like to work with me, are the ones that their employees go out into the community and say, hey, you need to work here because they have X, Y, and Z, or have you heard of this? And I think that speaks volumes to, our vision and approach to helping organizations.
I did a podcast with a lady who runs a pretty successful company. They just got named as one of the 100 fastest growing companies in the United States as a.
That's fantastic.
She and I did a podcast, and she said the podcast was really useful just because she showed it to a couple of employees as a way to talk about what they do in the company and sort of the culture. And that was what signed the deal for those people. And I think this is kind of what I'm hearing from you as well, right? And I kind of wrote my notes. I'm kind of chuckling to myself here as I'm writing. I said, growth mode is where One Digital helps the most because you guys create the honey that attracts the talent more effectively. Right. Why spend $100 in creating honey if you can do it for $89? Right. I mean, and that may be an overly simplistic way of looking at things. I think the points that I'm getting here is, look, customize and tune your plan, because when people come to you, I mean, it's almost like when you do selling to somebody, right? When you sell to someone, you want to create the persona. You don't want to be all over the place, right? You don't want to be trying to say, hey, I create widgets for everybody. You want to say, I create widgets for moms with 4-year-old kids. Gosh, hyper-focused, hyper-tuned, and that audience and that demographic will say, hey, I love the widget that you create because I need plenty of sippy cups because my kids are throwing stuff all over the place, or whatever the case is, right?
Right.
But they'll become evangelists for you. Now, if you start to tune the benefits, they also are highly tuned to the people that you bring in the door. They become evangelists for the company as well because they're leaning in, they're engaged, they love it, they're getting a lot of mileage out of working there. Right.
So let me ask you a question, Vinay. Other than Microsoft, what was another organization that you worked for where the benefits were so stellar that it pops up in your mind? Right. And what about those benefits was so unique that it was valuable?
So I used to work for this company called MicroStrategy back in 1998. And they used to do an annual corporate broadcast, which is where they would talk to everyone in the company, all 2,800 employees by the time the ride ended, if you will. And the first quarter every year was taking us all on a cruise ship for a week. I mean, pretty fantastic benefit.
Yeah.
But fourth quarter benefit was they rented out an amphitheater up in what was called Nissan Pavilion at the time up in Northern Virginia. And they rented out and they had a bunch of huge artists come out and play the place. And the whole weekend was just the company retreat. But you love the company, and I will tell you, anybody who had a pulse and had a warm breath and seemed like just one step above an idiot, I would talk to them. I was like, hey, you looking for a job? You ought to come and work here,
right?
Because I mean, I was a 20-something at the time, and going and hanging out on a boat where there was free alcohol, all week long.
Yeah.
I mean, that was exactly what I wanted, right? So, and that's the whole company was full of those people. So to your point, I'd never thought about it until just now, but it was exactly who they wanted in the company, and that's exactly what they got. And a lot of us, and we were all evangelists for the company.
Right. So and what happens is when we sit down with, the owner's C-suite and we start talking about how can we save costs, it's always coming down to save costs. And one of the conversations that we hear often is, all right, well, let's, shave a little bit of a deductible off here or co-insurance there, modify the benefits to create these cost savings. And ultimately what it's doing is it's eroding your culture because it's impacting the employees negatively financially. So you save the organization money, and I get it. The organization has to be financially healthy. Every dollar counts. I understand that. But what, we found that if an organization is underinvesting in their benefit packages, it's going to have ripple effects throughout the organization for that employee outside of the company. And if you target those organizations with directed specific funds, it doesn't have to necessarily be on the medical side. It can be somewhere an ancillary benefit that is more attractive to those employees.
So what I'm hearing is lots of times when I try to think through things, I always try to think about how do I step my game up to the next level. And I think what I'm hearing here is, you can shave a couple pennies here, a couple dollars there. You're not going to get an $85,000 saving from shaving a couple bucks here and there, right? I mean, what you're talking about is let's shift the game, right? Let's play at a higher level. Let's go from kind of Pee Wee League to farm team or farm league or to major league. you're shifting the game because you're starting to become more laser focused on building what Jerry says, great health benefit plans show your employees that you care about them, right? You're tuning it to your employees and tell them, hey, I care, right?
That's it. That's exactly it.
What, for the record, I wrote that just before Mike said it. I appreciate you, Jerry. Tell me about retention. I mean, bringing in talent, keeping talent is one of the things that I hear over and over and over again from business leaders, right? I can't have that person walk out the door, or I can't have my people walk out the door. I've spent so much time investing in them. This is a safety net to make them think twice about walking out the door, is it not?
It is, yeah. And when you find a consultant that's very strategic and different than the industry, you'll hear the conversation is going to be different through your renewal process and how to approach those employees as well. I'll give you an example. I know you love data. So in the professional services, there is a higher percentage of Asian Americans in that industry, right? Now, while Asian Americans generally have better health outcomes than some of their counterparts, they also have a higher burnout rate than some of their counterparts. So investing into a wellness program strategy will ultimately affect a larger percentage of your organization, and we can get specific and strategic on achieving that outcome.
So that's yes. The propeller head on me is kind of the propeller spinning really fast right now, right?
Yeah.
So you're telling me, look, if you've got a specific demographic that it happens to be a large portion of your population, you can start to tune based on those demographics to something that they need, so that they say, yeah, I'm not going to this company even though they're giving me $5 more an hour. I'm not leaving because I'm staying here because these people are investing in me.
Right. And from the employee, they won't know that they're being targeted. They're going to know and feel that they're getting a benefit that is helping them outside of just the medical, dental, and vision, right? And that's what makes a better, more productive employee. And that's the level of consultation and strategy that you should be expecting from your advisor.
And gosh, Jerry called it first too, so I want to make sure I make that shout.
Right. Jerry, I'm one of those 5 beers if and I are going to have to go to you, man.
That's right. You told me a story once that, and this is something that kind of struck me very early on. You talked to me about a company where they had a lot of benefits, but a lot of their employees weren't opting in. They weren't leveraging them. They started to see that as an opportunity. You helped them see that was an opportunity to kind of shift the dialogue between the company and the employees. Talk me through that story. I mean, there were some numbers you threw out there which I thought were interesting, but talk me through the story.
Yeah. So again, in the beginning, I mentioned creating consumerism, better consumers within the organization for healthcare, right? And we believe that education is super important throughout the year. So with that, as I mentioned, I think I used the example when I was telling that story about giving a Ferrari to a 16-year-old, just throwing the money at the problem. They're not going to see the value in it or understand exactly what, how that can benefit them. And that was the same example with this group as well. They were over investing in their benefits and they weren't targeted or specific. So what we were able to do was kind of guide their thought process a little bit to saying, hey, maybe we pull some funds out of here and put it into this bucket to create a more engaging and attractive approach for those employees.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it just kind of comes back to this customization can occur where you get greater levels of engagement if you just kind of lean in. So I want to kind of touch back on some of these blind spots, because I feel like we've actually covered quite a bit really fast, and I've kind of jotted down a number of blind spots. Number one is that whole idea of the healthcare system is broken and challenging and incredibly complex and diverse, right? So navigating that, I suspect even as a person who does it full time, or as an organization that does it full time, it's still a tangled maze. Is the best word I can come up with. Yeah. If you start to look at benefits as strategic, not a checkbox item, you kind of start to shift kind of how you're thinking about this. And if you measure objectives along what you're moving to that in that strategic shift, now all of a sudden you can start building outcomes along that, kind of like this example around Asian Americans, with the burnout rate, and if you want to keep those Asian Americans working and happy and healthy for longer, well, that's when you put a wellness program in place, right? This other thing I wrote down is inviting them to a better future. The custom boutique plan is part of something that keeps them in that better future. They keep saying, I want to be here. And this last thing I wrote down is what got here till today. If it's all this dialogue up till now is not compelling enough, just consider this idea that what got you through to today, the learnings that you have up till today, is not enough to make you go through tomorrow. Lots of stuff. This process can seem a little daunting to people, right? There's a lot of conversation. There's lots of technicality in this stuff these days. There's lots of check boxes and deductibles and copays and this and that and different, pharmacy plans. Give me 3 steps. Where does someone get started?
Call me.
They want to start this journey of reevaluating.
I'm kidding. To that point, Vinay, it is important to note that the consultant or advisor that you're working with should be specific to this industry and that it's all that they focus on, right? So in the past, we've seen some advisors that have also have, a life insurance portion of their business, or they've got other lines of coverage, and they kind of dabble, if you will, in health insurance. Nowadays, with how complex and unique the healthcare system is, you need somebody that is a specialist in this space. So, my advice for a business blind spot exposed is make sure that the advisor, that the consultant that you're working with is solely focused on health plan improvements. That is their main role within the organization. And then when also looking at those opportunities, look at the additional resources that are available through that partnership. And that's exactly what that relationship should be, is a partnership. You are on the same side of the table. Both of your goals are to try to save the organization as much money as possible while having the greatest impact on the employees. If you're on the side of the table and you're looking at your advisor and you're thinking, well, let me look at some other firms out there to see if they can save more money, there's already a bit of distrust there that you should kind of think in the back of your head that that's something you might want to reconsider. And then really the resources that I was talking about kind of aligns with the growth plan of your company. What are you trying to achieve over the next 5 years? Do you have a global workforce? Does this firm offer global benefits? Are you struggling with other ancillary business issues that you may be able to lean on your partner to help solve? One of the topics that we've heavily invested on over the course of the last year or so is diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And what we're doing now is we're building that into the benefit structure, as I mentioned, with the Asian American outreach program for the financial services. We'll also can take a look at, when you're recruiting new talent, are you recruiting in pools that will add diversity into your workforce, or are you pulling from the same areas? So we can talk about those different provisions within an organization as well. So when you are evaluating your options and you're looking for different resources, make sure that you're considering multiple levels of strategic advice throughout that process.
Interesting. I think something that popped up for me as you're saying this is one of my fundamental beliefs, and nothing is 100%, right? But very few things are 100%. But is the idea that if people start talking about benefits and immediately go to how much are you going to save me, what is the cost savings, how much am I going to trim here, you're not understanding the bigger picture, right? And I think this is what you talk about, health improvement specialists. If they're health improvement specialists, they're looking at how do we start to, again, go back to tuning things as opposed to here's a waterfront. Let's put all these things together and try to see where we can cut costs. If you're cutting costs, then you're just not understanding the value. Is that an accurate reflection of what you kind of maybe a distilled version of everything that you just said there?
Yeah, there's two things. Yeah, obviously cost savings is the ultimate objective, right? You want to have the best benefit option. But if that's your sole focus and you're not worried about how the other impacts are going to affect your organization, then you're missing out big time. So you'll make the plan as lean as possible, but you'll also be paying more in recruiting fees because people are going to be leaving your organization left and right. And I forgot the second topic that I was going to talk about for now.
That's all right. I think I've got enough topics here for people to digest.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. So the last thing that I'll say, my ADD is kicking in. The last thing that I'll say is there's a very big difference between somebody who is tactical in their approach, jumps right to cost savings, to somebody who is strategic. Somebody who's strategic, you're looking at 3 to 5 years out and how the changes that you're making in year 1 and year 2 are going to affect the organization long term. A lot of the times what we'll see is, somebody's doing a great job. They're doing good, but they're very tactical. So they'll put in a wellness program, but they don't tie that wellness program into better health outcomes that are ultimately affecting lower claims utilization throughout the year and in creating a healthier organization long term. So that's a major difference and something that I would advise any business owner out there. What is the overall strategy that you're trying to achieve, and not just the tactics that you're entering this year to solve for X?
Gosh, I'll tell you, a lot of these podcasts that I do, I always try to come away with a couple of blind spots. I will tell you, I generally range between 3 to 5. I have got 7 that I think are at least blind spots, and I think there's probably about 4 or 5 different side notes that sidebar conversation. So once again, you have not disappointed me. You have given me a lot to capture here, and a lot, I think, for others to take home as messages. We had some really good interaction from some of the folks, Van and Jerry. Hey, thanks so much for listening in and chiming in, giving us, and Jerry leading the conversation. Van, thanks so much for chiming in so early and kind of being part of the conversation as well. Mike, I appreciate you sharing with me. Again, didn't disappoint me. I expected this. I was going to get a lot out of this, and I got a page full of notes that proves it here. Thank you for the time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you having me come on here. And I know healthcare and healthcare costs aren't exactly the most riveting conversations at times, but when you open it up and you start getting intentional about it, you can really create some pretty amazing outcomes and impact your employees.
Yeah, we'll be taking these and getting some of these nuggets sliced down into small little video clips so others can put it out there, and I'll be mentioning you. If anyone wants to get in touch with Mike, we'll be putting his contact information out here as well, and you'll see some of the posts too, and with the video clips. So look forward to seeing those on LinkedIn here in the next couple of days and weeks. Thank you, everyone, for joining.